Good morning and welcome to the first edition of Behind the Tech. My name is Chris Dannyhauer. I'm the technology facilitator / coach at Cleveland High School in Johnston County, North Carolina. This is our first edition of Behind the Tech podcast. As we move forward with this podcast, we hope to educate and make folks aware of the way we do our technology at the school, how it works, what are the behind-the-scenes things, what's all involved, which people, both at the school level and at the district level, are involved in making everything work. It's many times a very complicated issue when you're working on the internet. I try to assemble internet it's like NASA. It's like the space shuttle going up. Everything has to go right in order for the technology to work. Everything has to work in concert together. So there are a lot of challenges, but there are also a lot of opportunities. We have really good tech folks in our county, both on the technical side and the engineers that make all the equipment work. They do a great job. The size of our county and the size of their staff are not really equal to each other. We have a large area, geographical area. It's actually larger than Wake County if you go acreage-wise. So we have a lot of area to cover, and they do a really good job of that. One thing we want to talk about today is how the Chromebooks work. So if we're looking at your username, typically that's going to be the first initial of your first name, followed by the first three initials of your last name. So for me, my first name is Chris. That's going to be a C. And then my last name is Dannyhauer. So the first three initials of that are DAN. So my username for Google would be CDAN. And then it would be the last four digits of my student ID number. So let's say that's 1234. So then my credentials to log into Gmail would be CDANE1234. And then, of course, you have to put the domain, the @jcsnc.org, Johnston County Schools, North Carolina.organization. So that's our Google domain that we purchased from Google, and it's a way that we are able to provide the Chromebooks, the use of the Chromebooks, your account number with the Google Docs and all that stuff. So that's all out of our hands as far as once the ID gets created. It's pushed out to Google from our servers, and then they create you a username and a password.
Hey, I'm Connor Tyndall with Introduction to Journalism, and the first question I have for you is, how long do the school computers usually last?
Well, that's a good question. Typically, the Windows PCs that we buy, we've got about 65 to 70 of those left from when we opened the school, so that's extremely old. That means they're eight years old. They've physically been at the school for 8 years, which means the model is probably 9 to 10 years old. And that's really too long. Anytime over 3 years, because they come with a 3-year warranty. So there's a reason for that, because after that third year, every year they're used after that, you lose 40% of your original capacity. There are a couple of reasons for that. One, technology just gets a lot faster. And so the processors inside the computers, as well as the drives and the capacity of the computer to operate and the little CPU spin, it's just limited. And the internet gets faster. So over time, they just get slower and slower and slower. One of the great things about the Chromebooks are there's no operating system to continuously, like, it just updates itself in the background. So like we're still running on Windows 7, which is really old, and pretty soon that's not going to get supported anymore, and we're going to have to go to Windows 10. And honestly, most of our computers in this building will not run Windows 10 because they're not fast enough. So, there are some issues, and we know this. We're by no means the only school in this situation. So the county tech folks are, having conversations about how we're going to solve that problem. So it's not just ours to solve. They're very willing and supportive of what we're trying to do, overall goals of our district.
What typically goes wrong with the computers and the Chromebooks in a daily classroom setting?
Well, we don't have as many issues with the Chromebooks as far as the operation. We have, obviously, people aren't born with their username. So sometimes getting that message out through the teachers is a challenge because the teachers have a lot on their plate. They can't always remember. So, we'll make documents and stuff like that. And typically what happens is if a new student comes in, they're not going to know their stuff. They'll just send them to me, which is fine. And I can really kind of get them set up with everything. And that takes about 24 to 48 hours for a student's ID to get synced up with Google so we can get them their access to the internet and to their email address and to the Google Docs and all those things. As far as the Chromebook operation, as long as we get them charged, probably the biggest thing that can happen to them is the screens can break. Sometimes that's due to just improper handling. Sometimes people just drop them, and that just happens. Their accidents do happen. And sometimes they are abused. So, keyboards sometimes are torn up and just have to deal with that. But, for the most part, for the money, and we pay about $200 a piece for the Chromebooks. For the money, we get a pretty good use out of them.
What do you think is the next step the school is going to take to upgrade their technology?
Well, we are investigating that now. I've been in conversations with Ms. Sauls and the county tech folks about how we're going to do that. We'll be buying some new PCs, obviously, in the pretty near future. The projectors on the smart boards are probably a very large concern right now. We've replaced about 18 of them from the original set. The problem is with the smart projectors, they're not really built to last that long. And honestly, they're not built for the classroom use where they're on 8 to 10 hours a day. So I think that's some of the reasons that they're breaking a little bit sooner than we anticipated. We've gone with some of the Epson projectors, and those have been pretty reliable. The second and third edition of the Smart, the UF70s, are really not a whole lot better than the UF55s, the UF65s, which were the original ones that were installed. Another thing a lot of people don't realize is the projector and the board are separate pieces of equipment. The projector is just projecting the image, and it's only connected to the board through the cable, like the computer cable, the VGA cable that connects the computer to the monitor. It's a very similar situation, except it runs through the wall and all the way through that little box in the wall. The touch part is just the board itself. So there are issues with that as well. The boards don't typically go bad as quickly. There are little elements inside the board and behind the board you can't see. There's some boxes back there that do go bad. And when they do, I just connect them right to the computer. The touch is coming right out of the USB. And then what makes that work is the software, the smart technology software, kind of makes that touch work and marry with all the pieces of equipment there. So you've got your computer, you've got the projector, and you've got the smart board as three primary pieces of equipment that have to work.
And I know one thing that I myself was wondering, so a lot of other students probably think this as well. How much exactly does it cost to replace missing part for a smart board, say a bulb?
Well, the bulb itself ranges from about $100 to $175. Typically, the newer ones, the bigger white projectors, those are about $175 to $200. We can get the third-party ones, which are probably about as reliable as the other bulbs, for about $120. So we typically, if it's an older projector, I'm not putting a $200 light bulb in a projector that might only last 4 months. The bulbs last typically about 3,000 hours. So that's about 3 school years, typically.
All right, well, if there's nothing else that you want to address here.
I think that's good.
All right. On behalf of the podcast team and Mr. Shaner's journalism class, thanks for your time.
Absolutely.
And,
glad to be a part of it.
And feel free to come back next time.
Absolutely. Thank you.